No matter your age, your plan for retirement can start today. From the News Channel 5 Network, this is the Retirement Report.
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. All right, we're going to be talking this morning. Last week I got into that about risk, and I was talking about capital risk, market risk, inflation risk, liquidity risk. One of the things, and it was a well-received program. We got a lot of calls from it, and I wanted to, I'm going to put that same offer out here this week for an analysis, but I'm going to add to that. I'm going to expand it even further because we're going to be talking about another risk, and that has to do with the costs in your investments. You know, I've mentioned before, Warren Buffett. I love some of the quotes that come from Warren Buffett, and one of the things too in looking at him as an investor is not trying to duplicate or mimic Warren Buffett. He's unique, and I don't think there's anyone, otherwise it would have been done, right? However, there are definitely some things that can be learned with regard to how he invests and the principles, and this is the most important thing when it comes to investing, the principles of investing. So we're going to be talking about the science of investing, the principles that are used there, and basically I'm going to share with you a quote to start that off, and this came from Ben Graham, who wrote the book on The Intelligent Investor, on value investing. He was in fact Warren Buffett's teacher and mentor. And this is, and the quote goes, "Investment is most intelligent when it is most business-like." And this is one of the things when you look at your portfolio, a lot of people today, and there's a recent article that kind of got me going down this road a little bit that appeared in Fortune magazine in which Buffett was interviewed. And one of the things he talked about was that of derivatives and the risk of derivatives in the market and the financial system itself, in particular in the part that large banks play in their holdings of derivatives. And you may recall there was a couple of great books that were written by Michael Lewis. One of them was called Boomerang, another one The Big Short. Most recently wrote another book called Flash Boys, in which he really gets into some of the things, in particular with Boomerang, the financial crisis, and what led up to it with subprimes and that, but also even more so with The Big Short. He gets in deeper with regard to derivatives and what those, how those affect the financial system. And this is where you go from investing the way Buffett looks at it, which is you invest in something that you know in a business-like manner is going to be a good business. It's going to be something that is going to make a profit, that is going to generate revenue, that it's going to grow as a business and be a substantial entity and continue to produce profits, and that means both for the business as well as, of course, for the shareholders. That's the type of business you want to look at. Well, it's hard sometimes to figure out which ones are going to do that, and even big companies can get into trouble and go out of business. So one of the things we look at there is diversifying. It was interesting to read that Warren Buffett also has left most of his money to be invested in index funds. All right, so one of the things he's looking at is he recognizes himself. He's not looking for someone necessarily to duplicate what he's done, though he's got succession plans for Berkshire Hathaway, of course. But what he's saying to Hathaway, rather, what he's saying, though, is that for most investors, indexing may be the better way to go. Now, there's another article that I came across, and this falls into line with one of the things that I talk to and go over with my clients is how to take indexing to the next level. So we're going to be going through a whole process this morning of talking about some of the risks in the marketplace and how those risks can lead to potential disaster if you're not invested properly, all right, if you haven't taken steps to protect yourself. I shared a quote that I've done before, and if they talk about the high tide floats all boats, all right? In other words, when the market is high, most all investments look pretty good, all right? So when whatever your mutual funds are, whatever your portfolio looks like, you're probably pretty pleased that you're getting positive results regardless of, you know, what broker-dealer you may be with or how you constructed your portfolio. The other part of this, though, is was a quote from Warren Buffett. He said that, you know, you don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. Now, That's not to be taken simply well, basically superficially. What we're talking about, another way to look at that, by the way, naked positions are another way that they, is a term used in the investment world, in which we're talking about an investment position that can cause you to have very large, possibly unlimited losses. All right, and this is what happened again with the financial crisis, is that there were a lot of banks holding derivatives, mortgage-backed securities, which then got rolled into, these were basically subprime mortgages that got rolled into securitized to be sold in the marketplace. These securities were then bundled into what were called CDOs, credit default obligations, and then, or credit debt obligations rather, and then someone came up with the idea, well, I think these things are going to be terrible, they're going to fall, they're going to lose a lot of money. How can I short them? Meaning, how can I bet against them working? So most people, when we invest in the market, if we purchase a stock or a mutual fund, or we're investing in our 401ks, we're basically taking what is known as a long position. We're thinking that over the long term these are going to grow. So our long position means that we're in it for the long term, we're in it for growth, we're expecting these to continue to go up over time, recognizing there's going to be some volatility in periods, 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 years, depending on how aggressively you're in the market. By that, how many stocks in your portfolio that will be negative. However, what we're also talking about then in that same time frame, there are bets going on especially with the large financial institutions, and this is what happened back then, both with when you're looking at Goldman Sachs, what took down Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch, all the different ones that got bought out by had to be bailed out in essence. Of course, AIG, again, one of the more famous as well with their financial services side. What they did, they bet heavily on derivatives, and they bet in the wrong way. They bet long and the market went short, meaning that these things lost money. Well, that's what created credit default swaps were created in that process, wherein certain investors, there was a handful of them, that believed the market was going to go in the opposite direction, couldn't understand why people would be placing these bets, thinking that these mortgages would in fact pay off, when the creditworthiness of the borrowers kept getting worse and worse based on the way they were being packaged. So there's a lot to this. If you'd like to find out more, these books are great. If you'd like to ever have a discussion, come on in, we'll talk about it. But one of the things that I get in there is to learn from that past, right? Learn from history so we don't repeat it. And yet we're seeing the derivative market growing. We're seeing, in Buffett was recently quoted in Fortune magazine, and this is one of the things he says, he's looked at derivatives, and he's been quoted as this before, as saying that they are weapons of mass financial destruction, and that he in fact believes that as these derivatives are again building up, not just here in the United States, so that's what he addressed mainly, JP Morgan Chase being the one he singled out specifically, that there's a fear that these derivatives, this large position, this bet that's going on, is going to backfire, and we're going to see another financial crisis as a result of that. Charlie Munger, who is of course Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway, went on further. He said, Wall Street is addicted to derivatives, trading like the masses are addicted to sports betting. All right? Munger tells me both are counterproductive but lucrative for the practitioner. But you're talking about gambling. This isn't about investing. And this was in a telephone interview when he went on to say the banks are just gambling parlors with huge odds in the favor of the people running them. And this was where he insists that the derivative books of the 5 major banks are a perfect business for the owners. It is one of the most lucrative businesses there is, but they are doing nothing for economic growth. And this was one of the problems in before, when you're creating the whole concept behind creating mortgage securities back before the financial crisis, the goal was, if I take these mortgages and I can put them in, securitize them, putting out in the marketplace, raise funds, that overall what I'm going to be doing is reducing the borrowing, the cost of borrowing to the consumer. So there was a positive economic benefit and society benefit in the end, in that we were going to be providing a better product for the consumer that would reduce their cost. So that's a positive, and that's the way most businesses run. A business is in the business of providing a product or a service, And to stay in business, they have to continue to add value if they can, where they can, for that consumer to attract their business and have them use their product or service. So that was the concept. Now, it got, unfortunately, this got gone away from, if you will. There was a moral failure, if you will, on the part of those that then started to package those into these CDOs and get them rated higher than they deserved and create these massive failures. And they were doing it in such a way that it was going back and put the consumer at risk, because the credit, basically the credit worthiness of those borrowers was allowed to get less and less and less, to where you had people that couldn't have afforded a $200,000 house that were being approved for $700,000 homes. So basically they got away from what was a benefit to society and the consumer and to things that were in fact damaging to them, and that's what led up to the financial crisis. And the sad part of the whole thing is the consumers are the ones that got hurt the most, the middle class, in the sense that, and one of the reasons for the downing of the middle class today is the fact that our government took on those bets. Basically, instead of allowing these banks to suffer from their foolishness and recklessness, we as the taxpayer ended up taking on that risk and bailing them out, and that's hurt us in terms of our current financial situation. So all of this I say for a couple of reasons. One, you have to be aware of the risks that are out there, and two, then, how to position yourself with regard to your investments or your retirement accounts to make sure that you're not going to be subject to those risks, or at least you're going to minimize the impact they might have and protect yourself so that even through a downtime, you're still able to maintain your standard of living and quality of life. Right? It's really that easy. And there are ways that we can do that, and we're going to talk about them, and I'm going to make available to you a way that you'll be able to get a free analysis of your current positions, your current portfolio, to check the risk on that. Are you in fact out there swimming naked, so to speak? And I don't mean you, the investor. You may not know. This may be your money manager, the people your advisors, the people you've entrusted your money with. Do they really know what they're doing as far as how much risk they have exposed you to with regard to the market? All right, well, we're going to get into that, and I'm going to provide a special offer to you when we come back. Join us here. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.